All of the sudden, I felt the most peace I've ever felt in my entire life. And in this vision, I was in Luke's body. And the first thing I heard was, I'm not in pain. Like, I'm hearing Luke's thoughts. Like, this is some amazing stuff God gave to me. And then the next thought was, I'm okay to leave my family.
Welcome to When You Look, where ordinary people share their extraordinary experiences, and you get to decide, was it coincidence or God? Michelle, welcome to When You Look. Super pumped to have you on the show.
Yes, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, listen, we are legitimately excited to have you, and we're legitimately excited to hear your story. Oh, man, I want to say so much about it, but I can't because it's totally your story to share. So before we get into the story, let's get to know you a little bit. Tell our listeners about yourself.
All right. Well, I live in Washington State. Lived here my whole life. I have 3 adult kids. Well, one is 17, 19, 21, which is weird entering this whole new stage of life, having adult kids. And I used to be an elementary teacher. That's why I have my master's in education, but God totally redirected my life, which we'll be talking about a lot today. And now I work with widows pretty much full time. I have a podcast for widows called Widow Too Soon. I wrote a book. I have a program for churches. I have retreats. I have nonprofits, all kinds of things. And so God just took what I learned in school about how to teach, and now I apply it to adults in a much different way. And I'm just learning this new season in life of, being widowed and adult kids, and I'm remarried, and like there's so many things, but I want to be able to reveal those in my story. So that's just, a little bit about what I do.
Yeah, fabulous. And what a great segue and foreshadow of what we're going to hear about. So give us a little bit of backstory on things, and then walk us through life as it went for you. Okay.
So you have to go way back in my story to understand the whole picture because it was over 17 years. So we'll do lots of fast forwarding. We're not actually going to live every day at 17 years. But we got to go back further than that. So Luke and I, that was my first husband, we met in high school. We've talked about this before. When you're on my podcast, we love the name Luke, obviously. Both of us have loved someone named Luke. So Luke and I met in high school. We did not date. We were friends. He used to joke around with me a lot and talk about all my boy trouble. We were in home ec together. Home ec, they don't even have home ec anymore, but they
Long
did.
gone.
Right?
Long gone. Yeah.
So we had the flower babies, you had to carry around. We have a picture of me and him with flower babies. And that's crazy when you think about it. Anyways, we met in high school, but then he was a year older than me. He graduated. I graduated the next year, went to college for 4 years in Texas, which is going to be part of my story later. So remember that. LaTerna University. And then I came back home and ran into him through mutual friends. And very quickly, we started dating and got married a year after our first date, which is completely God's timing with everything that was going to happen in the future. Even when we were dating, Luke had noticed a lump in his ankle. He went to the doctors at the time. He was 25, and they were like, it's tendinitis. Don't worry about it. He was a mail carrier with a walking route, so he walked a lot. And then we got married in August. And then actually 2 months later, we got pregnant. So there was just a lot in our first year. With our firstborn. And then he went to the doctor again because it kept getting bigger. And then they said, it's time for a biopsy. And it was mesenchymal chondrosarcoma, which is a very rare bone cancer normally found in children. So they didn't really know how to treat it. I was devastated. So, I was 24 years old and I just thought my world was going to be one way. I just started a teaching job, just got married, and found out I was pregnant, and then found out my husband had cancer. I was completely shocked. He was healthy his whole life, never had more than an ear infection. And he was this big, strong athletic. He was really good at baseball all growing up. It was just a shock that he had cancer. And I went through some anger, definitely. I was young and I was just why is my husband sick? All my friends' husbands, we were all getting married around that time. They're all healthy and we were all having babies and stuff. Why am I the one who has a sick husband? And then we had to decide. So we did chemo. It did not work. So it did not shrink the tumor, didn't do anything but make him really sick. And we decided together to have his leg amputated, because there was actually like two choices.
Wow.
Either we could have the tumor removed, and he'd have to wear a special boot his whole life, and it was way more likely to come back, or do the amputation 2 inches below his right knee. So after a lot of prayer, talking to our church, getting counsel, we decided to do that. And it was a very horrible day. I'll never forget like walking in and then watching him go into surgery. And I remember like just sliding down the wall, like right after they wheeled him out, like I'm back in that area. And I'm just crying and crying. And this nurse was like, "Do you have anybody here for you?" And I was like, "Yes." And I was just rubbing my belly saying, "It's okay, Hayden. Hayden's our firstborn. Daddy's going to be okay. Daddy's going to be okay." And then going out into the waiting room, and we had like 20 people there, to be with me. But it was super difficult. When he got out of surgery, he was in a lot of pain. So amputees have what's called phantom pain. And it feels like your foot's on fire or it's being crushed. And he had those his whole life. He ended up having those, and they were horrible and would wake him up. And it was just really painful, really hard to watch this big, strong man learn to walk again. And just everything that went with it was so difficult. So that was the beginning of everything. And that was May 7th of 2004. And that's what we considered his cancer-free day, because thankfully the cancer was nowhere else. So we tried to turn it into a positive. So that's a day that we told the kids every year, this is cancer-free day. It was also really hard because my dream was to be a stay-at-home mom. But I had to go back to teaching when Hayden was 6 weeks old, which was really difficult because everything going on with Luke, he was not working. He did go back for a little bit as a mail carrier, but not walking, just a standing route, but it's still too much. So maybe 6 months he went back to work, but it was way too hard. So I'm basically doing all of the working and all the stuff. We went on to have 2 more kids. We were told we might not be able to have more kids. So we tried right away and had 3 kids, 3.5 and younger, which was a crazy time. Which was, Hayden was 3.5. And then my daughter Haley was 18 months. And my son Peyton was newborn, like all at once. Crazy. And Luke being sick off and on. So he never really fully recovered because the chemo made his immune system really low. So he'd pick up like every little sickness. And in the time, like years after that, yes, we consider him cancer free, but he had pancreatitis, cirrhosis, diabetes. He was in and out of the hospital so many times with so many issues. So I never really got to experience what a marriage should be like because he was always sick. For 16 and a half out of 17 years, he was sick. Fast forward from the time of his amputation to later on, fast forward about 13 years, cancer-free, but lots of issues. And he started noticing some pain. So we went and had a scan and they found some tumors on his lungs. And we always knew if it came back, it would be in his lungs and it would be terminal. But once we passed that 10-year mark, I thought we were good. I was like, that would, we're good. 10 years, it doesn't come back as often, but it did. And I remember talking to the doctor, like, I don't get it. Like, how did this happen? And he said there was some dormant cell that lay there for all those years and then started growing. So this time we had kids to sit down. They were 9, 11, and 13 at the time. And they knew all about Luke's cancer because obviously like he was an amputee. And I mean, that's all they knew. But as they got older, they wanted to know, why is his leg different? All of that stuff. I also wrote a book about our first year of marriage because we were always like, people say first year of marriage is so hard. And we're like, why? Did they have cancer? Like, I don't understand what would be hard. Because we spent more nights in hospitals than like a hotel or a trip. So I wrote a book all about our first year, like when it was fresh, because I want to get it all down. And so my older 2 had already read the book. And so they knew really a lot about his journey. But this time it was so much harder with kids and sitting them down, but saying, we're going to fight this. Like, we're going to pray for healing. And we looked for all kinds of treatments because Luke had said, I'm never doing chemo again. Couldn't find anything. No, he didn't qualify for clinical trials. It's still a very rare cancer. And so he started chemo again because that's the only choice if he wanted to fight it and he wanted to live as long as possible. So he started chemo and again, it didn't really work. Like, I think maybe he did it for a year off and on, which was also super difficult. This time the kids watching him lose his hair and throw up and just everything that goes with chemo and be very weak and all of it. So it didn't work. So eventually, it was quality of life. Like I remember where I was sitting. I was in the car at Walmart about to go grab something for my son, and I got the call, and the doctor's like, yeah, he probably has 6 to 9 months. And I was like, what? And I remember walking into Walmart just being like, what is happening? Like you feel kind of out of body experience. Like, what in the world? My husband's going to die? What? Like up until then, I didn't believe that. I thought that God was going to heal him. And even past that time, I still prayed every day. I prayed with the kids every single day that God would heal daddy. But I did say it may be in heaven. I wanted to prepare them that it may not be here on earth, but he will be healed because he was constantly in pain. Imagine these big tumors growing in your lungs. He was constantly coughing and he had a hard time breathing. He would get where he would, his lungs would fill up with liquid and we'd have to have them drained. And I mean, just so many complications that it was a really hard life. And, so we got to that place where it was like, okay, just enjoy every moment. And we got to do some really fun things. So there's this place. I love mentioning the name in case somebody's looking for something like this. It's called the Dream Foundation, and they grant last wishes to terminal adults. Most everything else is for kids. This is the only one. A friend found it for me. And the 5 of us had never been on a plane together. We just couldn't afford it. So we went to Disneyland all together on a plane and got to go experience that with Luke, which was a beautiful trip. Also really hard because he was in a lot of pain. He missed one of the days because he's throwing up. But we do have some great pictures and great memories of being there with him. So we did that. He was a huge college football fan. He loved University of Oregon Ducks, like since he was born. That was like his thing. So we got to go and go on the field, go in the locker rooms. Like we got so many special, beautiful things that people did for us. I just put a request on Facebook and somebody would know somebody. And so many amazing things happened during that time period. And then it was time for hospice. And that was difficult because he was like, I don't want that means I'm dying. I'm like, no, you can actually graduate out in 6 months. This means VIP care. And I always get this message out to people like, get on hospice early. The average person, this is what our hospice nurse told us, the average person's on it for 10 days. He was on it 11 months. Like, I don't know how I would have done that year without having a hospice nurse. So it finally took 2 times. The first time he was like, nope, not doing it. And second time he's like, okay. I'm like, this is VIP care. You don't have to go out. Like they deliver all the medications. They come to you. No more waiting in the office with all the people. Like you get to just have, people come over. And so finally he agreed to that. And our nurse was amazing. She's this Christian woman who gave me her personal number and was just so supportive of our family, really bonded with Luke. And he was a very private person, didn't let a lot of people in. So they had a bond that was beautiful. So we started on hospice and then the world shut down in 2020. So, March of 2020, my kids were home, which now we can see is a blessing for our family because we had every day with Luke. So every single night we watched movies because the kids could stay up late, as that was really the only thing Luke could do. So we would watch movies, have popcorn. Sometimes I'd make cookies. It was just like kind of like a party every night with just like taking in every moment and being together. We also about 6 weeks before he died, we went to the beach. So everything was closed down. And he said, I want to see the ocean one more time. We had a trip planned and then everything closed down. But thankfully, a friend had a friend who had an Airbnb and they couldn't legally use it anymore. So they let us use it and we got to go. And it was Easter. So we spent Easter at the beach. And it was a very bittersweet time because he slept most of the time. And it's the strangest thing looking at someone and knowing they're dying. And he was having what's called muscle wasting, when it's like all your muscles start deteriorating, and his face was caving in, and just, it was very sad. It was just a bittersweet time. I remember setting up the kids' Easter baskets and then sitting in the closet, eating a Cadbury egg, bawling. I can't do this. I cannot walk my kids through death. I just can't do it. But I knew that it was coming. So anticipatory grief is often referred to you're standing on a train track knowing the train's about to hit you. And that's where I was at that moment. My entire life was on hold, not knowing when he was going to die, but knowing he was going to die unless there was some crazy miracle, which we still prayed for every day. So we got to experience a lot of beautiful things, another amazing memory. So I know they don't have these restaurants everywhere, but in Washington, we have a restaurant called Red Robin. And it was like Luke's favorite and also Haley's favorite. So her birthday was in May of 2020, which was COVID. And so, first of all, there was like her friends arranged, or we arranged this like drive-by birthday. You know, people did that during that time. But then one of our friends, somebody knew someone at the corporate Red Robin, and they knew our story, and they came walking down our road, like the whole like Robin dressed up, a big sign for Haley, and like this whole parade of people came and brought us food from Red Robin. And also in the mail, she had received all these gifts, and it was just this beautiful time. And Luke was so excited that she was excited, and he would always set goals. So his goal was like, I want to make it to Haley's birthday. And then he was like, I want to make it to Hayden's, which is in July. Unfortunately, he did not make it, but he actually picked out gifts for all the kids, which I thought was super special because he had just picked out a locket for Haley that said, "You're my sunshine," which was like their song, which is one of her like prized things that she had. And then he picked out presents for me to give the boys on their birthdays. It was also so strange. Like I remember going over like, okay, what do we want for burial? What do we want for this? And just like, it just seemed so surreal. And like, just like, what? Like, I mean, I can't explain the feeling of like knowing he was dying and just like having these conversations. And it was so cute. He's like, I don't care for my celebration of life, but it'd be cool if everybody wore Oregon Ducks. So they did. And we have all these pictures. Even like people, my family were like, they're into like cougars, which are totally opposite of ducks. Anyways, they wore it, and it was just a beautiful, like everyone wearing that. But fast forward a little more, he was getting weaker and weaker. May 22nd, his hospice nurse came and said, you know, it's coming in about 4 to 6 weeks, probably. She had told him, you're going to need a hospital bed. He was still functioning, fully functioning at that point. He was so scared of us having to change him and feed him and all the end of life stuff. So we had this beautiful day on the 22nd. We even had this like family hug, which we never really had, even our dog, which that's a whole other story. Side note, Luke had never had a dog. He said, when I have 3 months to live, I want a dog. Literally 3 months to the day. We didn't plan that. We got Bentley, our golden doodle, which was kind of a crazy time to get a puppy. I didn't realize it. And people are like, are you sure? I'm like, yes, he wants one. And we totally bonded with Bentley. And not only did he help Luke, he helped us after Luke died to just have this wonderful animal to just love us.
Hey, it's Mick. Real quick before we keep going, if this conversation is meaningful for you, do me a favor, tap subscribe so you don't miss the awesome stuff coming next. And if you've gotten even one insight from this episode, please hit the like button. It's a small thing, but it helps this reach more people who might need it. Last thing, think of one person in your life who would benefit from this. Just one. Share it with them right now. That's how this grows, person to person. All right, back to it.
So anyways, on the 22nd, we had this group hug. I was saying goodnight to the boys, and then Haley came in and Bentley came in, our dog, and it was just this beautiful moment. And then like something, he was up late watching TV. I was like, just come, like something that day, that don't leave his side. Like I just sat by him all day that day, like while he was watching TV, and I don't know, I didn't want to leave. Like I just had this feeling. And it was kind of like he knew, but he didn't. And a couple things he said in his last few days, he just held my hand and he said, thank you for being a great wife. Like you've been such a good wife. And I was like, you're welcome. Like it was just so like out of the blue. It's like he was just saying these things, even though in his mind, he would say like, oh, next Christmas, that like he didn't really believe he was dying, but he knew. And then he also said to me, he started crying and he said, I'm never going to get to meet our grandkids. And it was just like, whoa, like these big moments were hitting me. But on that day, I just asked him to come, like, let's go watch something together in bed and just hang out. And another thing about Luke, he's very independent. He didn't ever like me making him food. So I never really got to do that wife part of making food. But that night he said, will you make me a grilled cheese sandwich? I'm like, yes. And I was like so excited to make him something, and he ate it. And like, he never ate in bed, but that day he did. And we just watched shows. And then I was like, this is our best date ever. And he's like, yeah, it is. And it was just like this beautiful time that I can now see was totally God. And it used to, like, I used to stay up all night, like, because I had been given this book about all this, the signs of death, and you need to be listening for this. And, so I couldn't sleep. But that night I did sleep. But I woke up at about 4 a.m. on May 23rd. with the light in the hall on, and he was trying to get medicine. He said his calf was really hurting. So he's like, can you get me a heating pad? Can you get me ice? And we're trying all these things. And he's just saying it's hurting really bad. When all of a sudden he was having difficulty breathing. I saw his eyes roll back in his head and he could not breathe. I had no idea what was going on. I later found out they think it's a blood clot. Because of the calf pain he was complaining about, it was probably started in his calf and it went either to his heart or his lungs, and he couldn't survive it. But we can see that as a blessing because he didn't want to deteriorate in front of us. So he was fully functioning till the end. But I had no idea at that moment what's happening. Like what? So this is another beautiful part of the story. So Stephanie was his hospice nurse. She was not on work. She was on vacation, but she had given me her personal number, and I FaceTimed her and she was awake. And I said,
at 4 in the morning.
Yes. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. And she's like, let me see him. And she's like, okay, I think it's his time. And then she was talking to him. She was telling me to give him Haldol, which was this medicine to help him relax. And it was just, she told me that God had woken her up, that she's always woken up before when people are dying. Like she just knows. It was just a beautiful thing. So she was able to be there. And then we had the hospice person on duty. He came over and we had tried oxygen. Well, at first it's just me. I'm trying oxygen, trying all these things. And then the hospice nurse on the phone, he told me it's time to tell your kids. And I was like, what? So I woke up my kids. And I'll never forget going into Haley's room, who was just turned 14. And I said, it's time to say goodbye to Daddy. She said, no, it's not time. I'm like, it is. And the only way I can explain this situation is supernatural peace. I was not crying. I was not freaking out. And I had seen him struggling to breathe, but when I came back in the room with the kids, completely peaceful, his eyes locked in the corner, which I'll tell more about that in a minute, and completely calm. And then I told the kids, talk to him. He can hear you. And I remember my 12-year-old at the time, you're such a good daddy, like just saying all these things. I was able to have the peace of mind to like call his parents, call my parents. So his mom got there really quickly. She sang to him. Haley, my daughter, sang You Are My Sunshine, which was their song. And I was talking to him and I said, today you're going to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. And today you're going to meet my grandparents. And I wasn't crying. I was completely calm. And after, I think we were with him maybe 45 minutes or so of him just peacefully, eyes locked in the corner. He did try to talk. He kept saying, I. And I said, it's okay. We know you love us. And Hayden, my son, later actually had a dream. And he's like, he was saying, I love you. Like, that's what he was saying. I'm like, I know that's what he was trying to say. All this time, I'm wondering what's going on in his head because he can't talk. His eyes are locked in one position. He's not really blinking. Like, what is going on in his head? Which I'll get to that point in a minute. So I decided to play the song I Can Only Imagine. I don't know why. But I feel like it kind of gave him permission. Like this song, if you don't know, is all about heaven. I still can't really listen to it because it brings me back to that moment. But that is actually when he took his last breath. I don't know if it was like the song that helped him. And the entire time, his eyes locked in the corner. So I'm going to fast forward to give you a little input about what God showed me. And then we'll get back to the current where I was. Yeah. So 2 months after Luke died, I went to a grief retreat, which was unheard of. It was still COVID, but a friend had found this place that was willing to still have retreats and do all the stuff. And so I went, and God showed me a lot of things, but I want to share this one first. So we did this thing where we closed our eyes and said, God, where were you in my darkest moment? And ask him to reveal it. And the first thing that I saw, this is crazy because I don't remember shutting the door to my room. And Hayden said he was awake, but saw that it was shut and didn't go in. And that was when Luke was suffering. So he never saw it. So in this vision, I saw Jesus shutting the door. Like it got shut somehow. And so that protected my kids from seeing the really hard stuff. So that was the first thing that God revealed. And then all of a sudden, I felt the most peace I've ever felt in my entire life. And in this vision, I was in Luke's body. Like, and all, I felt this supernatural peace. And the first thing I heard was, I'm not in pain. Like, I'm hearing Luke's thoughts. Like, this is some amazing stuff God gave to me. Yeah. And then the next thought was, I'm okay to leave my family, which was his biggest fear. I mean, think about it. Like, I can't even think about that thought. It makes me so upset thinking about leaving my kids. And then I saw up in the corner, I saw Jesus like floating in the corner, like where his eyes were for that hour. Like, I literally saw him like floating there. And I heard the song as Luke, and I'm seeing me because I'm Luke, and I'm seeing the kids and everybody around and his mom. Like, I see everything, but it's this supernatural peace because he was already like crossing over. So he's like in this peace. And I hear the song I Can Only Imagine, and I follow Jesus towards the light. And that's when the vision ended. And it was like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, I've ever experienced. And at this grief retreat, I was able to share it in front of everybody who'd experienced all their own grief. Everybody's crying because so many people. One woman even stood up and said her son was in a fire or something. And she was like so upset about his death. And like that gave her peace, that he was probably peaceful at the end. And I share it all the time because it was something that changed how I viewed death and what he was thinking. So now I'll go back to where I was right after he died. So I was okay until I'm watching my kids kiss their dad goodbye and say goodbye to him. And they walked out of the room. Their grandma walked out with them. And it was just me and my mom and Luke's body. And that's when I laid on the bed and just held his cold hand and just cried, like the cry that like you don't even know you have. And there's something about watching a soul leave a body and seeing a body without a soul. I know you get this, like, you can't explain it. Like, it is just awful. And that's when I lost it. And the kids later told me that they heard me. Like, that's when they heard me lose it. They were in the other room. We had a small house. They heard it all. And my hospice nurse had said, you want the kids to leave quickly. You don't want to see them putting them in a body bag and all of that. And so we left quickly, which I do have some regrets. I later learned from my hospice nurse, we could have stayed with his body like all day if we wanted to. Didn't know that. And I think it was my mom had them call the coroner. And so then we were rushed to get out, and it was just a whirlwind, all of that. We went to my brother's house, and I was, and you're dealing with I've got to talk to the funeral home. I got to do all these things, and you're just kind of in shock. Even though I knew he was dying, I was in shock because it wasn't supposed to happen yet. And I'll never forget also coming back to the house a few hours later. The kids want to go home, and just the empty feeling, like walking in our room and seeing his prosthetic leg, like laying on the bed, because obviously they left that, and seeing the ice I brought him all melted, seeing his glasses where he left him, his cup. For months, I didn't let anyone touch anything on his nightstand. I'm like, nope, leave it exactly how he had it. And it was just such an empty feeling, and wow, I don't know what to do now. Like, my whole life is completely shaken up in an instant. I went from being married to being widowed, and like, what is my life going to look like? My kids are 12, 14, and 15. Like, I don't know how to do this. I didn't have any friends who understood it. I felt so alone. I had great family, great church, great friends, but none of them had been through what I'd been through. And it was just such a lonely place. I was surrounded with people right away. I think the first 2 nights, my sister-in-laws spent the night, and, there's always people coming over, and it just was a very dark place. I like to explain it when it's like everything you were ever looking forward to is gone. Like, you just feel in this dark tunnel. Like, I didn't see any light. I didn't see any hope, but yet I had to live for my kids. And being a widow when you have kids at home is especially hard, because you're grieving 2 things. You're grieving your husband just died, but their father just died. And so it's like balancing these 2 griefs, like taking care of them, but taking care of yourself. Thankfully, I had an amazing counselor, and she actually made a house call to my house the day after he died. And we did a counseling session in her car. And it was a hard time too, because the world was shut down. There was nothing for us to go to. And I know so many widows from COVID, like their husbands died of COVID, their husbands died in the hospital, and they couldn't be with them. So I am thankful he really wanted to die at home. So I'm so thankful that he could do that. but there's so many circumstances where people weren't able to be with their loved ones because of COVID. It was a really hard time. So that's why it was so great when a friend found this grief retreat, which that's another amazing thing that God did. So we did a graveside service like 2 weeks after he died. COVID restrictions. My own brothers couldn't be there because you had to 10 people. They were in their cars surrounding it, watching on live stream. So we wanted to do a celebration of life. That was just like the burial. And I had just arranged it with my church, and then they called me. They're like, sorry, new COVID restrictions. We can't do it. It was like for August, which was like a few months after he died. He died in May, and everything shut. There was no place to do it. I just decided to ask the leader at this grief retreat if we could do it there. And she said yes. And so we had a couple hundred people there. It was about a 45-minute drive from our house, but people were good. And it was all outdoors. So that was great for COVID stuff. And so that retreat led me to being able to do his celebration of life there. And it is beautiful. Like we did it, like we were overlooking the Columbia Gorge, which is just this beautiful valley with a river and just stunning. And that's where we got to do the celebration of life. But I want to share a few more things that God showed me at that same grief retreat and then kind of walk you through like how life got better for me. So, this retreat really was so part of my healing. So before the retreat, I was like, maybe I'm being punished because my husband died. Like, why did my husband die? I'm going through all these emotions. So there was another supernatural, actually like a couple more at this retreat that happened. So we did this beautiful thing. Never heard of this before, never done it since, but they had 3 crosses right at the same place overlooking the Columbia Gorge. And there was some red paint. And it sounds really strange, but it was very like sometimes what you do in the physical, then you can feel in the spiritual, right? So they said, we want you to dip your hands on this red paint, signifying blood, and put your hands on the cross and like look into Jesus's eyes. I want you to feel the pain that he felt. So I did it. And so I'm feeling his pain, and then I collapse and I'm brought back to Luke's deathbed again. And I am wailing, deeper wail than I've ever wailed in my whole life, because it was the first time away from my kids that I got to process everything. And I'm at Luke's deathbed, seeing the whole scene again, like, why, God, are you showing me this again? And then there's Jesus, and he puts a crown on my head. And he said, I am so proud of you. Out of all the people in the world, I chose you to be Luke's wife and to walk him to death. It's not a punishment. I chose you. And I believe that message is for you and for everyone listening. We were all chosen to be in people's lives, whether they're living or they're not living. It's a gift to be in people's lives. And that's my biggest message I share with widows and they tell me that it changes everything. So in that instant, it reframed everything in my life. Okay, I'm not being punished. This is a gift. Like, God could have chose someone else, but I got to be Luke's wife. Like, what a privilege. And so that changed something for me. And then there were there's one more supernatural thing. I'm walking in this field, and it reminds me of a field I grew up going to this camp every single summer. I loved camp. I was camp counselor. I was on staff as a lifeguard. It was like my favorite place to be. And I saw myself like running across that field, and God said, I'm going to restore the joy of your youth. And I was like, okay. And when I say God said, for me, it's in my head. I don't hear an audible voice, but I was like,
but it's a knowing.
Yeah, it's just like this thought. And I'm like, that's God. Okay. I'm like, that would be cool, because over time, like I was not the same person anymore. Like the years of cancer and hard marriage, all the things had like weighed me down. So I didn't really have that joy anymore. People had said they'd watched that happen. And then the other thing was, I'm going to redeem and restore everything you lost in your marriage. And I was like, what? Because Luke and I never really we never had double dates. We didn't get to go out on dates at night very often at all, because he was always sick. He was canceling all the time. We couldn't go do much of anything, especially the last few years. And so I knew in that moment that I was going to get married again. I didn't know when or how or who, but I knew. And so I just kind of put that in my head. I wasn't ready yet. That was 2 months after he died. I was not ready, but I knew I was going to get married again. And so those are all things that God did at that retreat that are just amazing. And kind of going back to what life was like at that point, very, very hard to lead myself, leave the kids, all the things. So I just dove into healing like it was my job. And that's what I tell people. You've got to treat healing like it's your job, because it really is. That first year of grief, you've just got to work at it. And so I read every single grief book I could find. I had regular counseling, grief retreat, and a lot of time just on my face, like, God heal me, like, help me. And I would always be covered with the peace that passes all understanding. Every single time I would be covered with it. And this is also how I explain grief. I'm sure you can relate to this, that in the beginning, it's like a dark, stormy, cloudy day. It's awful every single day. One day you see like a sunbreak. There's like a little bit of sun. And you're like, oh, there is life out there again. Okay. And as you are doing the work and time is passing, it starts to be more and more and more sun, until eventually where I'm at 5.5 years later, it's mostly sunny. I still have stormy days when I grieve Luke, but they don't last as long. Like, I'm able to, like, okay, it was like a 10-minute storm, not an all day storm. And that's where I am now. And so as life started to get better, I was like, okay, I'm feeling better. I think I want to help other people. You know, I searched high and low. I couldn't find any groups for widows. And so I decided to start a nonprofit. It's called Widow Goals, widows helping widows not only survive, but thrive. And so I created this group. We meet once a month. We've been doing it for several years now. And we are now in 30 cities, because other people said to me, how do you do it? And I made videos and taught them on how to do it. And I have a group where I just share things on how to lead widows groups. So that was one of the first things that I did. And then I started really early in my journey. I started a TikTok channel and I just started sharing, and I found thousands, literally thousands of widows who were resonating with what I was saying. And just, I would say, widow goal number 1, get out of bed. And I just like give them little goals. And so that's how that started. And then the other really big thing that I did is I found people on Facebook who got it. I found Facebook groups. That's really where I found my widow people in the beginning. And that's where I tell people to look first, is social media, because you may not know anybody in your area. And so I was on this group and I met a widower and we became really good friends. His wife had died from cancer as well. So we just kind of bonded over this whole thing. So anyways, we decided, we were in this group and we're like, these people need Jesus. Like, they're turning to all the wrong things. So we decided to start a podcast. It was 11 months after Luke died, and it's called Widowed Too Soon. And we just literally talked about everything. So he's a widower with young kids. I'm a widow with teenagers. And we're both under a year into this journey. And so we just start talking about everything. And it's been an amazing journey, meeting people literally all over the world that I've talked to that have said this podcast has helped them to not feel alone several times. I mean, this is what keeps me going on the podcast 4 years later. I've had people say, I was going to end it all, and then I heard your podcast, and I realized I'm not alone. I've had the same comment about my book, and I was like, okay, that's enough to keep going. So after about 3 years on the podcast, my co-host left, and so I was like, okay, maybe I should just be done. I don't know. Another supernatural vision. All of a sudden, I'm walking in my house, and I see this just comes like, this time it's a picture, and it's me handing all these people like megaphones. And it was like, there's so many more people that need to tell their story. You can't quit now. And so I switched it to a mostly interview podcast now, where widows and widowers from all over the world share their stories. And so that's been an amazing thing. I also wrote a book, and that was interesting because I started it 6 months after Luke died. I was in this contest. I didn't end up winning, but I wrote 3 chapters. And then I just let it sit there. And I'm so glad I did. I was a baby widow. I knew nothing, like, really, compared to what I learned later. And so I wrote 27 chapters in the beginning of 25. January 25, I was like, okay, we're about to be at the 5-year anniversary. I'm going to finish this on Luke's death anniversary. Like, I'm going to launch it that day as a way to honor him. And so I had a big deadline. So I wrote the rest of the book in a couple months. And Widow Goals, Steps to Finding Peace When You Lose Your Spouse, is basically steps that people can take in any order. I have people who have not widowed who've read it that said it's helped them in their grief. And it's things like get out of bed, re-enter social spaces, because that's a really hard one. Don't be surprised by anxiety. Kindly inform your friends and family what to say and not to say, which has a a QR code. They can download it and send it to their family and their friends. So it's like, here's what to say, what not to say, because there's a lot of that that's really not easy. I have, widow specific chapters like dating again, solo parenting, which is different than single parenting. We don't have anybody else to bounce ideas off of or go to another parent's house. Have an eternal perspective, just to bring that back to like, let's remember that every chapter has a verse and every chapter has questions and action steps. And so I created that, and I've had so much good feedback from that, so much that I then created a workbook where there's a space to pray and there's more action steps, more questions. What I found out after I launched that just a few months ago is that groups were forming all over to do the book and the workbook. So then I was like, I need to create a leader's guide. So I actually took a group of widows through this and created the leader's guide as I was doing it and made it into an 11-week program. And the point now is anyone, even someone who's not widowed, could lead this. They could literally open the book. It tells them what to say, what kind of questions to ask, like all of it. And my mission right now is to get it into churches. I want it to be like the grief share for widows. And when I say widows, I mean widowers as well. I've had a lot of widowers tell me my book has helped them. And it's my mission because widows are mentioned 103 times in the Bible, yet so few churches have any support. This is what I say on every podcast. I just challenge every listener to go to your church, whoever's leadership, your pastor, leadership, and say, can you tell me how we support widows? And just let them tell you. And if there's nothing, I have a program, or do any program, like just get some support for widows, because I heard the statistic. I don't know if it's true, but this one, a widow, told me that 80% of widows leave the church after being widowed. I do know it's high because it is very, very lonely, because you're seeing families and couples. The singles groups are for 20-year-olds. There are great programs like Celebrate Recovery, divorce care, like all this stuff. That's great. But what are we doing for our widows? What are we doing for the people that God called us to take care of? Like, that's huge.
Widows and orphans. He's very clear about that.
I remember the day I read the verse that said, God is a defender of widows and a father to the fatherless. I was like, oh, that's me and my kids. Like, he really loves us. Like, that's awesome. And I have felt this amazing bond with God, like since being widowed, especially before being remarried, that it was just like, he's like my husband as far as like every decision, everything. It's just up to me and him. I don't have another person to bounce it off of. So that's my like big mission right now, is getting that into churches and helping them to see we need to be doing something. And most churches are not. So remember, God promised me that he'd redeem and restore everything I lost in my marriage. Fast forward about a year after Luke died, I was kind of at that place. I was kind of ready to start dating. And across my Facebook, it was like, someone you may know. And it said Joel. And I was like, I kind of remember him from college. So remember, college, Laterno is going to come back in my story later.
You did mention that.
Yeah. So Joel and I had met in college. We were friends. We even have all these pictures together, like more like acquaintances, never really close. But I remembered him. And so I asked him to be my friend, and we just started chatting, and he was single. And then we started FaceTiming, and we really like enjoyed talking. So we did like a couple months of just talking, and then it was like getting more serious. And we decided that we weren't going to be official until we saw each other, because we hadn't seen each other in 20 years. He was in Louisiana. I'm in Washington. And we FaceTimed for, 2 months before he came out here. He had family in the area, so he was going to visit them for Thanksgiving and also meet me. And I'm like, I don't know why our first meeting was with our kids. It was a little awkward. We met at an Applebee's. He brought his son, and I had my 3 kids. And my daughter videoed it for us. It's really cute. But he was late because he's trying to get his rental car and all this. And my son, he was, I think, 13 at the time. My youngest, maybe 14. And he was like, maybe he's not coming. Guys do that. He might just not show up. And I was like, no, he flew from Louisiana. He is coming.
Out of the mouth of babes, right?
Yeah. So he did come, and it ended up being amazing. It was awkward with the kids, and then we had our own date, and he told me he loved me, and it was just like kind of fast track from there. Like, how do we figure out how to get our lives together? It's much harder dating in your 40s than in your 20s. He has 4 kids. I have 3. Like, there's so much. He's divorced. I'm widowed. There's like so much that goes into all of that. And it was a miracle that it all worked out. And we actually got engaged. We went to the homecoming of our college. My best friend came too. And he came, and he had told me, like, I knew we were going to get engaged. He's like, I don't have the ring yet. We're not getting engaged. But it was flown in to my best friend. Her family lives there and they sent it to her house. And what's also beautiful, because it takes a very special man to love a widow, is that he respects my love for Luke so much that I had given him the wedding band. So I knew he was going to do this, like from Luke and I. Still have the ring. That's for my daughter. But the band, he had it melted down and had the diamonds from that ring put in my ring from him. So when he proposed, he said, "This ring is from both men who love you." And it's just like, isn't that beautiful? Like, it takes a special man to be able to not be threatened, because I've seen my friends who date people who don't get it. Like, they're jealous and all of this. Like, we have pictures of Luke. We talk about Luke. I talk about Luke like every day on podcasts, and my whole ministry is widows, and he's good with it. I post about Luke. Like, he's good with all that. So we got engaged at our college, which was just amazing, to where we first met. And then was figuring out life, and we got married March 18th of 23. And it's been the most amazing thing, because I could not do what I do now because I was a full-time teacher. No way could I financially do this right now. And so because we're married, I now can. And he's like, "No, I work so that you can do what you're doing. It's such important work." He even said to me, so he was a missionary in Brazil. He grew up there, and then he went back later in life with his kids, and he lived there for 7 years doing mission aviation, all this stuff. But he said to me one day, "I think we're helping more people now than when I was a missionary. Like, by you doing all the stuff with widows, like, we're reaching more people." I have this sticker on my computer that says, "Go into all the world and preach the good news," to remind me that we as podcasters are fulfilling the Great Commission. And like, we're doing that from home. What a great time to live, to be alive. We're like literally reaching people in countries all over the world. And so I am so thankful that God brought our marriage together. And it was like, it had to be a very special person to like support all of this, like emotionally, spiritually, financially, like all of it, so that I can do what I do. And I've been so blessed to have him in my life and have somebody who really gets this. And he's been great with my kids from the beginning. He said, "I'm never going to try to be your dad. I am just another support person in your life," and they've respected that. He does Bible studies with my youngest, which is beautiful. And like, he gives me flowers on the death anniversary of Luke, and I go put the flowers from Joel on Luke's grave. Like, at our wedding, we actually, I watched another widow do this. And when someone who's divorced and widowed get married, there's grief on both sides. And so we wanted to acknowledge it. So right after I walked down the aisle, I took the microphone and said, "We want to acknowledge whatever you're feeling today, because both families have been through grief to be here. And so it's okay. Grief and joy can coexist." And we just wanted to basically talk about the elephant in the room. Like, sadness had to come, a death of a family and a death of a father. And so we acknowledge all of that today. And it was such a weird feeling. I went to Luke's grave the day before I got married and was just like crying and just like, this doesn't mean that I don't love you. It's just going through all of those emotions. But what I tell people is like, okay, when you have a child and you think, "I will never love another child as much as this child," and you have another one, your love multiplies. That's what I feel like with Luke and Joel. I still love Luke. I love Joel. I love them both. Like, they're different loves, they're different relationships, but I love them both, and in the beginning, I remember, especially my boys, they were like, "Well, he's so different than daddy," because he is night and day. I'm like, that's okay. Like, I can love somebody completely different, but they really do respect them. I wouldn't say they're all like super close. But it's good. There's nothing like negative with it, but it's a whole different world when you're blending families and all of the stuff that goes with it. And people often say in my widows groups, like, "I would only marry someone widowed because they're the only ones that get it." I'm like, no, make it about the person, not about whether they're divorced or widowed. Make it like about, because they could be somebody like my husband who completely gets it, although he's not widowed. He holds space for me. He'll be like, "Okay, is this are you grieving? Do I need to get, he'll just, he did that the other day. Is something, he just was like, "Did that bring you grief?" I don't remember what it was. And I was like, "No, but thanks for asking." Like, he's very sensitive to anything. So yeah, my life is not what I thought it would be. And what I've taught my kids and what I believe is that God's hands touch everything. So he doesn't cause sickness and death, but he allows it. His hands have touched everything. He either allows it or he causes it. So if God allowed it, I can accept it. I heard a sermon with that when Luke was sick. And so I really was like, okay, God allowed this. I can accept it, and I've truly seen God take my mourning and turn it to dancing, and truly seen beauty from ashes. And so that's like my whole life mission now, is to help other people. And people have asked me, I get this question all the time, why do you still do all this widow stuff? You're married again. Like, well, because I know what it feels like. Yeah, I don't have to. I don't have the feeling of being widowed. I do have a husband to go home to, but I know what it's like, and it's a very lonely place. And so I want to pour into those people who might not have anyone at all, to be able to help them know it gets better. Because I called the few, the widows that I did know, and asked them if it would get better. That's all I wanted to know. And so that's my mission, is to help people know that, and to educate people about grief, because there's so many myths and like so many things that are wrong about grief, that people, don't have any education. And so I try to educate not only the grievers, but the support people, because they don't know what to say. One of the biggest things that support people can do is write down, it doesn't have to be about widowed, write down the date that someone you love has lost their person, and put it in your calendar, and text or call them every year, because every year that goes by, it gets lonelier. You're like, people don't remember. I'm sure you can relate to this. And it's like they forget. I mean, even the first year, my best friend who had drove to be with me on that day, she forgot. And I told her that was really hard. So she put it in her phone, and she never forgets now. And I tell people that's really important to do, because it's so lonely when no one gets it. I have a system where I collect emails and all those dates from widows. And so on those dates, I send them an email that I'm like praying over them. And I said, prayer transcends all space and time. So you're being prayed for right now. And I get so many return emails. Thank you. You're the only one that remembered. Thank you so much. Nobody remembered. And I have this big vision. Joel helped me come up with this, that I want to add something on the form that says the name of their church and a contact person. Contact their church about a week before and let them know, hey, there's a widow that's going to have this date, if someone could reach out from your church. But honestly, I'm a little scared that the church will drop the ball. So what if the widows put all their information in and the people at the church don't do anything? Then I'm going to feel worse about it. So I'm trying to figure out how to make that all work. But I really just want people to understand, like, we need to take care of our widows. And yeah, so I guess that's my story in a nutshell. 51-minute nutshell.
Michelle. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. There's so much there. I do have some questions for you. But young lady, oh man, I'm so sorry about Luke. I know I've said it on your show and when we've talked, but thank you for sharing so transparently today.
You're welcome.
And, oh man, for those that aren't fully clear as to why Michelle has been alluding to grief, our firstborn was a full-term stillbirth, and his name was Luke. So different than Michelle and her grief, but similar to Michelle and her grief. And Michelle and I have had some other conversations about all that. So that's what she's talking about. Well, just a few moments ago, you talked about God causes things versus God allows things. Because God allows it, I can accept it. Help us understand how you were able to, or what got you to the point where you could accept it.
I mean, it was just kind of like, what other choice do I have? Like, I can't do anything about this. So why fight it and be angry and all these things? I was like, I don't have a choice in this. Like, this is the first time I heard it, like on the sermon when he was sick. It was like, this is going to happen. So I just need to accept it and accept that this is what God's plan is. I don't like it at all, especially that, anticipatory grief. I don't like this. I don't want this to happen, but it's going to happen. So why not accept it and then see how God can use it, rather than just sitting here and feeling sorry for myself. And, there is the part where you do need to grieve and all of that, but you also don't want to stay stuck in it where you're just like paralyzed, but instead say, God, how can you use this? Who can I help? Who can I help that needs some hope right now? And we can all do that. Whatever we've been through, we can look at it and go, okay, God, show me who I can help with this from what I've learned.
Yeah, I think you were alluding in that to I stopped resisting it.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess you could say
Which I
that.
know is sort of the other side of acceptance in a way, right?
Yeah.
The coin of acceptance.
Right.
But yeah. Well, you were also talking about grief and joy being able to coexist.
Yes.
You were talking about this in the context of the wedding, but I think we both know that it can exist beyond that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
tell us more about all that, that concept.
Yeah, there's so much of that. First of all, people usually feel, in my experience, a lot of people feel guilty the first time they have joy after their loved one dies. How can I laugh? My husband died. And you have to let go of that. And first of all, they'd want you to be happy. God wants you to not be stuck in that. God wants you to have joy. But as far as, I have a lot of bittersweet things that are very beautiful, but yet there's sadness. For me now, it's mostly about my kids as they're growing up. There's kind of a second grief that happens when kids lose their parents when they become adults. They have more grief. Like my oldest was like, no offense, but I wish daddy was here to talk to. I'm like, I know. I wish he was here, when he's making decisions about college and like all the things. And so there's so many joy and grief moments with my kids. Like basically everything, all the big stuff. Like they all got their licenses after him. They two have graduated high school, one's about to, those moments. My daughter talks about it like, he's not going to be there on my wedding day. And she told me, I might have told you this in the last time we talked, that she said someday when she has a son, he's going to be named Luke. I was like, that is beautiful. But she's like, she told me this like a week ago, like, I'm sad all the time at the things he's missing. I'm like, I know, but this is what I believe. I do not have biblical backing. I'm going to share what I believe. So God says that we, in heaven, there's no pain, there's no sorrow. He also talks about the great cloud of witnesses, which I believe could be people like our loved ones cheering us on. So this is what I think, that how like horses have blinders? Like I believe they can see down our beautiful moments and they're just blocked out of any sadness. Like that's what I think. They put on these like glasses that don't allow them to see sadness, but they can see the beautiful moments. And I don't believe our people talk to us, but I believe that God shows us little signs and little things. Like I ask for it all the time. I didn't ask for like Luke to talk to me because I don't believe that's how it works. But especially in the beginning, and people could say, oh, that's not God, but I believe it was. Every time we would take a picture, there was a stream of light like on one of us. Like you couldn't see when you were taking it. You saw it afterwards. All three of them. Okay, they got their driver's licenses all 2 years apart. Every single one of them, stream of light as I take a picture of them on their first drive. Like, I believe it's God saying, like, he can see this. Like, this is cool. Like, I don't know. There were graduation pictures like that. I mean, like so many things. And, my kids all believe that. Now my oldest is like, I don't know if that's true. And he's really in a place of doubting his faith and trying to figure out what he believes. But I'm like, no, I believe it, and there were so many things in the beginning that I was like, yeah, I believe that your dad can see this. And so for me, it's like basically any special moment. I just went to my daughter's college concert. She's in choir, has an amazing voice, bittersweet. Like, I wish he could see her doing all this, and maybe he can, and just like every moment, just little things. My youngest is going to turn 18, and just there's a lot of secondary grief also. It's like you were going to have this whole life together. You were going to have even, losing a baby, you were going to have all these things. And so there's secondary grief that kind of goes on forever. You'll have those pieces of like, oh, for me, the hardest day besides his death anniversary is our would-be anniversary. Like it hit me hard. So I had just married Joel, but it was my 20-year anniversary. It would have been like a few months after marriage with Luke. And I had a really hard day. Even though I'm happily married to Joel, I was like, what would we be doing? We'd be on a big trip. Like if he had never gotten sick, where would we be? But I find a lot of joy and grief at the same time. It's an interesting feeling. I had it December 1st. It was the anniversary of when he proposed to me. It was a beautiful, that day. There was nothing wrong with it. But then I was feeling sadness because I missed him and thinking about the day. And it will just hit me. And I have dreams about him and I wake up sad and, just all of the things. So you just kind of learn to live with it and that it doesn't take you out for very long. And the best advice I give people too is to feel it, because what we feel, God can heal. If we're not feeling it, He's not going to be able to heal it. And so let yourself feel it. So I let myself feel the grief waves. I know this too shall pass. It's not going to last that long, and it's going to be okay. So I think it's really important in your grief to feel it and feel the joy as well. It's okay. Don't stuff down the joy. It's okay to be joyful and happy. And, there's a lot of that in the beginning of dating. There is a lot of guilt too. Like, oh, is this okay? I went through that. It's like, no, you have to release that. Like, I fulfilled my vows. I would still be married to him if he hadn't died, but I don't think I'm expected to just be single the rest of my life. If, I know God wants me to be married. He gave me that vision. So yeah, there's a lot of joy and grief together, a lot of days.
Yeah. Wow. Man, you brought so much clarity to that though. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow. Oh, Michelle. Man, there's so much here. I want to better understand. And this is for me. This is for our listeners as well. I think that, man, this is for everybody. Tell us more. Help us better understand. It's a gift to be in somebody's life.
Yes. Yes. It's especially when you've lost someone, you realize how precious every moment is. But I think, we can take that vision that God gave me and realize that anyone, it doesn't have to be someone who died, like anyone who's you have a relationship with, God placed you there, even if it's not someone that's easy to love. Like, God placed you there. When you realize that, when you actually think of like the God of the universe, placed you in this person's life, it's a gift, and to really spend time with people and make sure they know that you love them and take a lot of pictures. That's another one I tell people, you never know when it's like your last picture with someone, but really just realizing that relationships are a gift from God. He didn't have to give us relationships, but He did, which I believe they will continue in heaven. Like, we'll continue to have those relationships, but they're going to be perfect. No misunderstandings, no hurt feelings, all of that stuff. But I think it's, just realizing that every single person in your path, that's in your life is a gift and that you're chosen.
Tell us more, though, about how He made that clear to you.
Well, that was the vision, that I had. It was just this moment of a crown being put on my head and saying, I chose you. Like, it just became clear during that vision that I was chosen for this life, like a really hard life, but that it was His plan. And so, just that moment is really what made it clear to me.
What was it like to hear that because of how hard it had been for you? That life. Sorry, let me be clear.
Yeah.
Knowing, of course, because you're looking back on a very, very hard life for many years, lots of sacrifice.
Yeah.
And what is it like to hear from God through the Holy Spirit that I chose you for that?
Like a privilege and, loved. Like, I chose you. I'm proud of you. And it made it all worth it. My son asked me literally, I think last week, if you knew on your wedding day to Daddy that he was going to die and everything you go through, would you still do it? And I said 1,000,000 times yes, because he made me who I am today. I wouldn't have you and your siblings. I wouldn't be doing the ministry that God called me to do. He goes, I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it. I'm like, but you could, I've had other people ask me that too. If you would do it. I'm like, yes. Now, it would be harder to know ahead of time, definitely. Like, if I was 24 years old and then saw my life now and like all it would be harder to know. Like, I don't want to know ahead of time, right? It's easier to look back instead of because if we knew everything that was about to happen, it'd be that anticipated grief. We'd be just standing there waiting for it to hit. So I think it's better to be able to just live life as it comes and enjoy every moment and know that in this world we will have troubles. That's what God says. Not that we're not going to have troubles. We will have troubles, but He promises that He will never let us drown. He will never let us burn up. Like, He will be there with us through the trials, through the fire. And that He's always going to be with us, even though it's very difficult. Such a hard life. Yeah.
Well, I have one more question for you before we ask our kind of normal landing the plane questions. I'd really like to understand more about Bentley and
Oh,
the role that he has
oh my
played
goodness.
post Luke dying.
Oh, I love Bentley. He is now almost 6. So yeah, Bentley is a golden doodle full of energy. And we thought he would like grow out of it, but he's still just like a puppy. But he like loves unconditionally. And I even remember before Luke died, I remember this is gonna sound crazy, and I have never publicly shared this, but like I was crying really hard and I looked into Bentley's eyes and I swear it was Jesus's eyes, like in a dog, like comforting me. Like I can't explain it other than like your eyes, like they're kind like this is like Jesus's eyes, and he gave me such comfort. And then I just remember so many times laying on him, he's soaking in my tears, just being such a light to the kids, really helping them. Like he's still every time we come home, like he's so excited he pees on the floor, like he hasn't gotten over that, but he loves us that much. It is a little annoying sometimes, but like he is just so excited. Like it's this unconditional love, like every time we come home. And even like the day he died, I remember the neighbors took him, but like him when we got home and him coming back and just like, and he knew. Okay, like he knew something was up. Like he comforted us, but I'm telling you, this is another weird thing that happened. We had it was like a drawing of Luke that actually one of my old students had grown up and she became an artist. I had her draw it for the celebration of life. It's up on the mantle on our fireplace. He's staring at it, barking one day. Like it was so weird. And we'd like, where's daddy? And he was like barking. And it was like he reckoned it never happened again. But it was like this very strange. And for a while, we'd be like, where's daddy? And he'd look around and like sometimes still, if we say daddy, like he'll kind of like look around and I don't know. God has given us such a gift in animals, right? I didn't know. I'd never owned one as an adult until Bentley. And he's definitely just really helped us through a really hard season and just such a light. Like my kids love him so much. My daughter thinks she misses most at college is Bentley. Well, and she has a cat too now, but Bentley the most. And so, yeah, he's been an amazing gift to our family. And I mean, there's so much more to that too. Like he came from Idaho. My best friend picked him up and brought him because he was cheaper. He's like a budget dog. And he brought him to us and like stayed with us. And it's just like there's so much like it came from her. And so he just has such a special place in my life. And now knowing about puppies that I didn't know then, it was a crazy time to take on a puppy. Like I don't think I would recommend that to anyone. But he was a great distraction and he would just sit on Luke's lap and be so calm. Like he'd be crazy with us, but calm. I've watched the show and it talked about like dogs can sense, especially cancer, and they know, which is wow, how? I don't know. But he was just so calm with Luke and just sat there and just let Luke pet him while he would read the newspaper. Luke loved like old school reading newspaper and he just pet him. So yeah, he has been a great blessing to our life. So not looking forward to the day when he dies someday. That's going to be really hard. And now I understand why people who lose a pet, why it's such a big deal. It is not exactly the animal, it's what it's tied to. And so when he dies, it will bring up grief about Luke. And so now, because I've actually, through Grief Recovery, it's a program that I've done, I've helped people with pet loss. In the beginning, I was like, oh, I don't know about that. But I learned it's tied to all the things in their past that the dog has to do with or the cat or whatever. So I get it now. So Bentley's amazing. Thanks for asking. No one's ever asked about him on a podcast.
Yeah. My wife is a huge dog lover, and I for sure felt prompted to ask you.
Yes.
So thank you for illuminating all of that and his blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's land the plane, Michelle.
Okay.
Man, there's just so much here. And of all that you have described, I mean, we've got, I literally can't even recap it. I mean, there's so much here. Everything that you've described, you've been talking about God as it's been intertwined. But are there coincidental things? Is this coincidence or was this all God in action?
1,000,000% it was God. Definitely not coincidence. I believe, it's God for sure.
Praise God. How has your life changed based on everything you've described?
I know the healing of God, like he healed my heart. I mean, I can remember specifically like listening to worship music, dancing around and being like, God healed me. Wow. Like this is amazing from where I was to where I am today. So I've learned to trust God more. I've grown a deeper faith. I believe in supernatural things. Not that I didn't before, I just hadn't experienced a lot. And, it just has made me who I am today. I had to go through hard things in order to have this ministry. And my first grief, widow's retreat, we're about to do our third. The first one, literally, and then God speaks to me again. It's worship time, and I'm brought back to Luke's deathbed again. I'm like, again? But he said, if that hadn't happened, this wouldn't be happening. I'm watching these women worshiping and crying and like getting healing. And I was like, whoa. Wow, not that I would ever want Luke to die, but God is a master at taking things that are broken and making something new that's beautiful. And so I've seen him do that in my life over and over. And I like to use this illustration too. At that same grief retreat, we had everybody come in, like when they first got there, and we had these little flower pots, and we said, paint a picture. We had like paint markers of what your life looked like before your husband died. So of course they're already crying. I just draw a picture of my complete family, all this stuff. And then later we say, break them. This is the moment they died. Very emotional. So they break them. And then we have all the leaders act as Jesus and give them these beautiful like glass beads, different things, and said, your life will never be the same, but it can be beautiful in a new way. And they put together the broken pieces and the new glass pieces, and it made these like beautiful coasters they got to take home to remind them that it will never be the same. Because people are always like, when does it go back to normal? It will never go back to normal, but you can have a new normal that's completely beautiful. And I have seen God weave those beautiful pieces into my life over and over. One more beautiful thing that I have to share. My daughter is now joining me in ministry. She, like I mentioned, has a beautiful voice. She is going to my retreat in January to lead worship. On top of that, she is launching a ministry for the kids of widows because she said, I wish I would have had someone to talk to. And so she's starting an Instagram where it's going to be all about sharing how God's helped her. And she's going to encourage them to DM her. She can't do like mine's Facebook groups. That's not her age. They're going to be on Instagram. So she's going to be singing songs about her dad that she's written and really helping them towards healing. And so it's been such a beautiful thing. And she told me, it's because of what you do. And I've seen how you help people that I know I can help people. And so now she's launching this ministry, and God spoke to her. She goes to a Christian college, and they were at some prayer night, and she felt like God was like, it's time. Like, you need to start helping the kids of widows. And at that exact moment, I had texted her a text from a friend who said, can I have Haley's number? We have someone who just lost her dad, like the exact moment. So she was like, okay, it's time for me to start that. And so she's launching that in January. And it's just been beautiful to see the ripple effect that it's now having on her. But, all the kids are different. My oldest doesn't know what he believes right now. We're just praying that he will find his way back. That verse, like, he who began a good work and you will be faithful to complete it. Like, I know he knows the truth. He's just got to figure out, he's got a lot of anger about his dad dying. And my youngest is doing really good spiritually. So they all kind of like, have to find their way in their grief. But anyways, I just think it's beautiful how Haley, my daughter, is now stepping up to be a leader for the kids of widows. And she's going to be speaking at the retreat and leading worship. And I am so excited to watch her grow as an adult. She'll be 20 in May, so she's an adult now. And it's been a beautiful thing. I mean, of course, we will always miss Luke, but God has used this for such a beautiful ministry to help now the kids of widows and just help families basically all over the world. So I can definitely see the beauty that God has brought.
Praise God.
Yes.
Man, that is so wonderful. So wild too.
Yeah.
to see the lack of coincidence of
right.
the timing of text messages, to you, to Haley and her ministry and other things.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Thank you for sharing all of this. I want people to be able to stay in contact with you.
Yes.
So you talked about book and podcasts and other
Yes.
things at the outset. So, but we need to absolutely repeat that. So
Yes.
tell us all about all
Yes.
of that stuff again, please.
The podcast is called Widowed Too Soon with the number 2, and it can be found on any podcast platform. But everything we talked about can be found on widowgoals.org. So the support program, it'll say Widow Support Program. Click on that. It's actually a 2-minute video to your pastors about why we need this. And it's a whole page about the program, and they can get a discount and all of that stuff. We have a retreat information. We have a page that tells where all the cities are that have groups. And there's links to my book. My book, Widow Goals, can be found on Amazon. And there's also links on that page. And you can email me, Michelle@widowgoals.org. Find me on social media, Widow Goals. It's pretty easy. It's the same thing everywhere.
Yeah. Widow Goals. We'll link to all of that. But there you go, folks, for those of you that are listening and not watching and listening. So, oh, Michelle, thank you.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for all the tears that I got even to shed in this one. I mean, and the laughter. Thank you for loving Luke. Thank you for loving Joel. Thank you for loving King Jesus and your kids.
Yes.
Thanks for being on When You Look.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Was it coincidence or God? You decide for yourself, but I believe you just heard a story for His glory. When You Look is powered by stories just like this, and yours could be next. Go to whenyoulook.com/be-a-guest or use the link in the description below. Drop us a comment and share this episode with somebody that needs it. Until next time, thanks a bunch for listening and watching, and God bless.